So James is going to review this second volume of Auden's Prose because I ran out of battery juice there while I was doing my film reviews.
But you were still talking.
Well, I was.
Yeah,
I don't have much to say. I
No,
mean,
just
the
finish
Super Pets was so bad
Yep.
that I saw
These
the
have been
like the
around
whole
forever
time.
in comic book form.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So.
But the whole time I was watching it, and I watched most of it. I fell asleep for a bit at the end, like maybe 20 minutes or something. But then when I got to the credits and it's showing the names, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people like Keanu Reeves and Dwayne Johnson and people with names were doing the voices
the Rock,
for these.
the former
I
Rock.
was so surprised because this seemed to me the quality of, you know, when you get some kids movie from Guatemala or something, and you're watching this film and you're like, wow, yeah, this is like art school in Guatemala quality. Like, anyway, so
which one of the Super Pets was Keanu Reeves? Were you able to figure the voice out? I mean, the Rock would be some.
Paying attention.
Maybe the big horse. What a Crypto's the dog.
Yeah, maybe.
Super horse.
But so then I watched Ghoster and I'm like, yeah, this is about the quality of that I expected Super Pets was. It's so bad. Ghoster was terrible. It's like a rip-off of Casper, and they were like,
Casper
oh, okay, well, we
Ghost?
can't call him Casper. Let's call him Ghoster. And the acting is so terrible, and the story, the script is so bad. It's, I don't know, I think they just decided, okay, well, let's just write it 5 minutes before we do every take and see how that works out. It's so terrible.
Are they still putting out Casper things or whatever?
I don't know.
You know, I've seen some of the old ones. Like, it looks as though they were put out in the 40s, like...
well, maybe they were. I have no idea.
For movies, not for TV. But Casper used to be one of my favorite comic books.
Oh, really?
Oh, I love Casper. I hated the ghostly trio. They reminded me of older brothers or something like that. Maybe they are his brothers. I'm not sure.
But yeah, you... Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead and talk about Auden. I'm done.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So this is his essays from 39 to 48. And 39 is when he emigrated to the United States, as I recall, and he started to turn from being, you know, like he kind of flip-flops. He's, you know, like in his essays, the first volume of essays, from something like 29 to 38 or whatever. He's saying he's a social democrat, he believes in democracy, he's sympathetic with Marxists. I think he was a commie, actually, really. With maybe pacifistic tendencies, but you know, willing to put up with all the garbage. And geez, I mean, he looks as though he converted sometime in the wake of the economic crisis that came with the big stock market crash and the Great Depression and things like that. But geez, I mean, anyone who turned to Marxism then, an awful person, really, at least during that period because of their lives, because this Stalin had come to power, I believe, in 24. He'd already been, you know, he didn't really go really crazy until about 29, thereabouts. Didn't really consolidate power until 27, and then he went increasingly nuts. But yeah, anyway. So what does Auden turn to? Like a typical aggressive propagandist, he doesn't find the proper balance or anything like that. He goes back to, he describes it differently, kind of like what is it? Evangelical. Well, English Catholicism or something like that, but it looks as though it's kind of like Anglicanism, but maybe high Anglicanism. Anyway, you know, like his essays become increasingly, I mean, I tend to want to zone out. Well, it's not a question of wanting. It's just kind of happening because I heard this stuff, has raised it on it, you know, biblical verses, you know, taken out of context. And, what? You know, like, I had to memorize stuff, like 50% of the Psalms. There's 150 of them, so 75 Psalms. You know, like half the Proverbs. Proverbs aren't nearly as long as the book of Psalms in the Bible, but you just go, oh man, do I have to?
Well, you ended up better off for it, though, probably.
Exactly right,
your
but
memory's
it's
amazing.
the problem is when it's you know, like Auden's a little bit better because he'll be bringing other stuff in, but is who was it said, beware the man of one book? Yeah. And I don't care what book it is, you know, the New Testament or the Bible or the Quran or the Analects of Confucius or stuff like that. You can only fit so much reality into one book. And beware the man or the person of one book. Anyway, this guy was Auden was an aggressive propagandist.
Yeah, but he
talented.
obviously wasn't a man of one book.
Well, the problem is when people become Christians or stuff like that, they tend to quote from stuff again and again and again. No, I think he went to Oxford and all this sort of stuff. He knew his Latin pretty well. How much? I think he's pretty good, probably at French. He looked as though he's very good at German. I think he lived in Germany for a while and stuff like that. Anyway, he gets into preaching mode, but he's preaching mode in the 30s, basically. I call them commies. You know, like they're going around saying, I'm a Marxist, but I'm not a communist, because communism is just horrible, you know, like, well, not really horrible, but it's not quite as bad as capitalism. But, well, I mean, the brand was soiled by Stalin. It was really soiled by Lenin. But the problem is, ever since Lenin, it wasn't really Marxism. Marx believed that the vanguard of the revolution would be workers, the working class. Lenin already saying, we'll have a revolution of the workers and the peasants. I don't think Marx would have been terribly sympathetic. He already, so that's why I say, starting with Lenin, it's communism, not Marxism. And each step away from Marx's formula of the workers being the vanguard of the revolution, the less Marxist you are. So you get Marcuse. Oh, we don't need the workers at all. They've been bought off by the capitalists. You know, or Mao. You know, we'll actually the peasants of the world, the rural poor, will lay siege to the urban centers of the world. What? The workers are in the cities. And, you know, Marcuse, Maoists, stuff like that, they, aside from the Trotskyists, they were the going thing, Castorists, you know, in the 60s, and ever since. You guys ain't Marxists. I'm just going to call you what you are. You're commies, you useless idiots. You're not even Marxists. And Marx had his problems, let me tell you. You're not Marxist, you stinking hypocritical liars. You lie like Donald Trump, only you're worse. You believe your lies.
Okay, so with Auden, with this volume, would you say that it is better or worse than the first volume?
Well, I mean, I'd rather put up with a Christian than I would with a commie.
Okay, so you're saying the first stuff was the commie stuff, and then this one is the Christian stuff, and
it morphs into the Christian stuff.
Okay.
I prefer it, but it's ideological. idiot illogical. Anyway, I don't recommend it really that much. I mean, it's just I want to understand his poetry. Like,
So it helps you figure out where he's coming from.
Yeah, I was talking with recently, maybe the last week or so, with someone, like a instructor at university who didn't like
Auden.
In English, who didn't like Auden, but particularly didn't like Musée des Beaux-Arts, the Museum of Fine Arts and stuff like that.
That one's great.
Well, he doesn't like it, and he says it encourages people to just sit back and do what the plowman's doing, or like plowing while Icarus goes down in the sea, or the expensive ship. Guys, there's plenty of food down here.
Can't stand it when they fight.
Well, they got to do what they got to do. I think they're maybe lining up for when we head inside.
Oh, that is what they're talking about. They're like, that's all mine. I'll have to put out more for them.
Well, maybe holding some out in your hand or something like that. One came down a couple of times while you were inside getting a new battery. Anyway, it looks as though it's faction on faction or something like that. Family on family.
All right.
Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. So I haven't been able to quite figure it out, because I think that was published in 1940. Who knows when it was written? But my reading of it, I think your reading of it, is kind of like it's saying this is what the old masters understand suffering. You just kind of walk on by. But we were figuring, he's a new master. He's not an old master, and he's actually saying, you've got to worry about Europe. He's in the United States, and basically I think it's addressed to people in the United States, or Canada or whatever, than anyone else. He's saying, the old masters were saying, about suffering. They were never wrong. Like you just kind of ignore it, like the expensive, delicate ship that's passing by and ignores Icarus fall into the ocean and stuff like that. I think he's being ironic. Well, I'm not sure, because he was starting to turn away from the communism and stuff like that. Like I say, I don't know how. I think he was kind of like a pacifist communist, but I think it's personal pacifism. Like I'll encourage people to go fight in the Spanish Civil War. What were you saying?
A cat. There's a cat that's upset.
Maybe. Anyway, I'm just reading this, or read this. I finished this, and did I? I think I reviewed the first volume. I didn't review his poetry because
no, not yet.
We were
returned
hiking and stuff like that. But maybe you can get it out one of these times when the weather's a little bit more conducive. And,
okay.
I'll review that. But definitely don't buy this new. This was put out in 2003.
No, all of the things that we review, some people have written comments like, oh, you guys sure buy a lot of movies. Nope, haven't bought them. We borrow them from the library. So
2002 was when this was put out. And yeah, this is borrowed from the library, or we get stuff from, you were saying, from there's a little library in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's true. We do.
Free.
Yeah, but we do.
We haven't bought used books for, well, basically 3 years.
Yeah, and we haven't bought new books for a long time. But we used to.
We used to buy the occasional.
Yep.
But don't buy this one new, definitely, even if you got the money.
Okay.